Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. Today I want to talk about the new song I released, and I want to go over some interesting stuff, particularly in the kick and the bass, and how I use drums to complement the kick and the bass pattern to get a nice arrangement. And I've extracted the drums and the basses from the main part of the drop, and we're gonna take a look at them. Okay, so if you haven't listened to it, this song here, for which I have the drums above here and the bass down below here, it's a bit more progressive, and there are a lot of small elements to it which turn it into a nice and more complex drop than you would normally have in your normal psytrance, where it would be just a normal, a normal bass line playing. As you can see, we have all these other elements down here, and I'm quickly going to play it. If you want to listen to the song itself, I'll leave a link down below to Spotify where you can listen to it. And yeah, without further ado, let's play it and see what's interesting about it. Yeah, so this is the main drums, as you can see. I didn't put in the whole loop. For example, you can see some empty audio tracks in here where other elements would be later in the drop. But for now, this is enough. So what I really want to talk about first is the basses, and then I will talk about how I use these kind of orchestral drums from the Cashmere pack to add some more to the drop while complementing the bass line. So let's first go over this main group. As you can see, it's a bit of a mess in here. There are a lot of different groups inside groups, and I didn't really label them, but I'll try to do my best to explain everything. We'll first go over the main bass, which sounds like this. Oh, the main bass is only these two, so you would have. So as you can hear, very in-your-face kind of bass patch here. It's made up out of 2 layers, and I've rendered them down. As you can see, we have basically our main layer here, which does like the low end and the middle, and then we have this high-end bass on top of that, which, as you can see, it has a wider plugin here to make it a stereo bass, and then together they make the main bass sound. Now I want to first of all talk a bit about some of the bass notes here. For example, if I go to this one, yeah, as you can see, I tuned these up 3 semitones, and there are different ones if I can really find them. Probably here we have another one of 3. This seems to be back at 0. But what that does is it kind of makes the drop a slightly bit more interesting. Here you have a loop where I didn't change any of the notes, and you wouldn't have any change to it. And then here we have a small change down here. It just gives that little bit of a change and grabs your attention, and it makes it kind of stick out and rememberable. So that's the main bass, and then we have all these bass elements down here, which come directly from the Cashmere pack. I just kind of dragged in the samples I liked, and what I did to most of them is I had to tune them. As you can see, this is +2 semitones. And I believe, yeah, I just took out most of the frequencies and just ended up with the ones which I liked. In this case, I actually opened up a filter so that the first one would be, as you can see, You can see that it's a low pass, and then the higher ones open up, so you get this nice roll and it becomes more clicky. Okay, so next up we have this one, which also consists out of 2 bass lines. It sounds like this. It's slightly distorted. As you can see, we have a Saturn on there which does some distortion. But the main focus here is that we have these 2 layers, which I've removed all the subs from, and it's again just a nice way to add something to your bass line. So if I take this off, you get that, as opposed to just okay. We have another one here, which is again the same principle, just 3 bass lines. As you can see, I used 3 different ones to create. That's simple. If I just solo it, you can hear we have a simple kind of bass fill here. But what I want you to note is that, again, these ones, as you can see, this is plus 13 semitones, 1 semitone to tune it to the main bass, and then an octave higher so that it's in a different register, and gives a different, it kind of gives a different feel. It has like a going up kind of feel. And I put it at the end of the bar here, so it kind of announces the next section. So you would have section A, section B, and then another section here, and then your 4th section here, and this is kind of used to go from one section to the next. And the same can be said for this last bass, but only at a smaller level. If you divide your drop up in sections of 2 bars, this bass is used to go from bar 1 to bar 2, and then from 3 to 4. And it's just a simple slide bass, which I made actually from the same patch I made the main bass from. And when they were both in the still as a serum patch, I just froze them in this way first, and then I had a duplicate which I then later turned into this sweep, which is a really cool trick you can do. You just save your bass patch somewhere, and then you edit the envelope so that it turns into this upcoming sweep instead of your normal bass line. Okay, so those are the basses. As you can see, I'm not really going to go over the processing here. If you want to see bass processing, I already have videos on there. I just kind of want to go over the arrangement of these different bass lines and how you can create more interesting bass lines using these extra bass lines in here. Now next up, which is also a fairly important part of the drop, are these orchestral drums, which sound like this. As you can hear, we have a nice delay on there, and of course I have them sidechained. I also have them high passed, so they don't interfere with our kick and bass. So you kind of need to think of them as like secondary elements to your drop. You have your kick and your bass, which are the main elements, and they take up all the low end, and they take up most of the volume of your track. And then you have these drums, which are like the secondary elements, and then you have your effect sounds and pads, which you can think as another step below that in terms of like volume or how much frequencies they use up, or even in like a stereo space. So if we go over something, or if we go over where these samples are placed, you can see a really cool part of, or a really cool thing I did here is where I place samples. Some are placed on the kick, which is this main one, and then we have these offbeat samples, which are either placed where there is no bass sound or just before a bass sound here, to kind of function as part of the rhythm of the bass. So if I play this, you can really hear how this drum element is actually part of the whole rhythm as a whole. it kind of feels like this bass is still there because of this drum hit, in a way. Not really as a frequency way, but more in like the rhythm. And then we have the same thing over here, and then here to again to show off that we're in a new section of the track, we have this fill element here, which is made up out of multiple things. We have the one we used before, we have our main one here, and then we have these other layers, which are more of a high frequency kind of drum. And that really goes to show, or really puts you into the next section of your drop. So you can hear that the kick cuts out and the bass does some cool stuff with, which we discussed before, with the thing, with these extra bass lines here. And you can really hear that you're going to the next section. So you kind of need, if you were to visualize this, if I close this up and I, for example, put in a new audio track, you can kind of visualize this, which I'm going to do with an automation here, where you would take your drop and kind of divide the energy up. If you were to think of the energy of a track, you would have something like this, and then this goes up to signal the new section. So you would have a lot of energy here because of the kick and the drop hit, or the first drum hit, and then it kind of goes down and you have a bit more coming into this kick because of, again, the drum hit and the other drum here. Kind of having more mid-range helps in that. And then once you go to towards the last part of this section, where you're going to drop into the next section, you kind of raise the energy level. Now this is not to scale or anything, or not even good information to use, but it kind of shows how you can work with different like energy levels almost in a drop to kind of really signal where you are in the drop and have a nice flow to it. And the same goes for like this fill element here and this crash going into this newer section here where the claps come in. You can really hear. You can really hear how this fill and this crash kind of announce that a big change is coming. And that's also reflected in the lead sound, which I didn't import in this particular case, but they're there in the original project. So I hope you find this interesting, and I hope you can use this in your productions to kind of get a better bassline, a better flow through your drop, and it allows you to make these extra complex bass lines in a way that kind of makes sense musically. So if you like this, please leave a like, and if you have any suggestions for tutorials you would like to see, leave them down in the comments. Again, the song where this is based on is going to be in the description if you want to listen to the whole thing. And I'll hope to see you next time. Bye bye.